Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. With me tonight, as always, Drew Crawley. What's up, my
Hi,
friend?
sir. Not a whole lot. Just kind of winding down a long weekend and gearing up for the week to come. I think you and I have got a concert to be looking forward to
Yes.
Wednesday of the week as we're recording it. Going to go see our friend Steve Gorman and his band, the Bagmen.
Yep.
So that'll probably be the highlight of the week if I had to guess, but
Yeah,
pretty
probably.
low key otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah,
How
no, that'll
about
be a
you?
lot of fun. No, that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll be sure to report back on a future show about that. But I'm sure there'll be some stuff on our social media while we're there too. Jason Johannes, of our friend with All Things Blues and Southern Rock podcast, he's going to be there, so we'll get to meet him in person. That'll be very cool. So again, it'll be a lot of fun. So look forward to hearing about that. Uh, who knows? Maybe we'll see you there, and that'd be great too. Right. But it's just kind of a busy week. Next week looks to be the same,
Hmm.
but good kind of busy, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk. We're going to get right into the topic tonight. This is going to be primarily a whiskey show. We're going to be talking about the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. So before we get into that, we want to tell you about Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart Co-op is a collection of friends who produce content for the whiskey enthusiast. We have shows like Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. They do a great job helping you understand more about how what's in your bottle actually got there. They talk with distillers from all over the place, and they cover a wide range of topics. It's always a fun listen. Alan also does One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, so check that out. If you have a question about anything distillation, send that into Alan. Alan will post a YouTube video response. Alan also has If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything, where they get a little bit outside the world of spirits and get into the spirit realm. Uh, some very interesting shows there as well. And we also have My Whiskey Den, where craft whiskey is king, with Pat and Mike and Mitch every Monday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. Be sure to tune in and join the good people in the chat. And we want to let Mike tell you a little bit more about where you can find our show.
All right. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification to find out when new episodes come out, which is every Wednesdays on all of your streaming services everywhere. Apple, Spotify, whatever other ones there are, and the YouTube where you can watch the live recording itself.
Thanks a lot, Mike. We really appreciate that. Good job as always. Just you're a good friend and a good sport to put up with our crap every single week. I also want to tell you, hang on, let me find this. I have one more thing to put in here because this is important. We've got some friends in this whiskey thing that we've been able to meet along the way, and two of them are Dave and Adina Ewalds, and this is inside baseball stuff. This is the second show we're recording tonight. So in between shows, I get a text from Dave saying that Adina is in the finals of the Bourbon Women Cocktail Contest.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go, September 28th. Go to Paris Town Assembly, and you can get tickets to go in and watch this cocktail contest and see Adina mop up the floor with these hosers. It'll be awesome. So congratulations to Adina and to Dave just by hanging around or whatever. But they're going to come on the show soon, and we're going to do a fall cocktail show, assuming that we can afford Adina at this point. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that a lot. So let's talk about the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame a little bit. This was
Yes.
established in 2001 by the Kentucky Distillers Association. Criteria for entry is, I don't know that there is one. I mean, I've looked, maybe I missed it. If I did, apologies. But I don't think there's anything that specifically says you have to be this, you have to do that, and the other thing, and for so long. And so I think it's just whatever. And I think you get nominated by a KDA member, and then you get voted on, and then you get inducted. So now the first class is kind of like a baseball Hall of Fame. You know, all the people that, Babe Ruth and all that crap. That's kind of the way this first class is for the Kentucky Bourbon Hall. There might be a name or two on here you recognize.
That might be an understatement.
So you get Parker Beam, Lincoln Henderson, Elmer T. Lee. I mean, a lot of these people, they have whiskeys named after them. Fred McMillan, he was a very important part of the Barton operation. He's a guy that you may not be as familiar with. Booker No, we've all had a little bit of his whiskey. Same with Jimmy Russell, Jim Rutledge, who basically saved Four Roses from the brink of the abyss, and then Bill Samuels. Drew, anything on this list that just kind of like jumps out at you?
No, I mean, I think all of those individuals are kind of legends in their own right. Those that we're still fortunate enough to have with us. In particular, I know you and I have both gotten to spend a little bit of time with your close personal friend Jimmy Russell, as well as Jim Rutledge.
Right.
And those folks are just a wealth of knowledge. They, sometimes up of 50 years ago, kind of set the stage and started building the foundation for what it is that we're seeing with this boom in American whiskey. And so it's really kind of cool. I think, there's maybe an argument or two about somebody else that should or shouldn't have been on that first list, but
Yeah.
I've got no gripes with that as an inaugural class. I think it's a pretty solid group. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, if you're looking for who's the Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb of bourbon, it's hard to argue against these guys.
Most certainly.
And all have a lasting legacy. And, some fortunately are still active even now. So that's fantastic. So I think out of the gate, I think this thing got started really well. And so we'll kind of move through the years a little bit. What I want to do is just kind of fast forward to this year for a second, and then we kind of work our way in between and then look a little bit towards the future. Now, this list is really special because our friend Jerry Dalton finally got into the Bourbon Hall, and so that's something very excited about. And I've had the incredibly good fortune to get to know Jerry and visit with him a few times, and just a prince of a guy, and I cannot be happier for him. And one of the things that he did while he was at Beam was create this signature craft series. So that's one of the things that I'm drinking tonight.
Excellent.
There was he had not, believe it or not, he'd never had this.
Wow.
And so the first time he had this, I got to drink it with him.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
so that
a
was
pretty
cool.
special moment.
But Jerry's he's a fantastic guy. So really happy for him. And I'll actually get to be at the induction ceremony in September.
Excellent.
And I think we've got this show scheduled to air. This show will air on the date of the induction ceremony.
Outstanding.
So,
that'll be great.
And then, I'll report back and see if they threw me out.
Sure.
Which, I don't belong anyway, but I'll just ride it till it stops. And but Jerry's a great guy, and I'm very happy for him. But there are others on this year's list too. Dixie DeMuth, who was a female bar owner and did a lot through the legal process to get some of the archaic laws changed in Kentucky regarding women being able to own a tavern and to serve drinks and that kind of thing. Pete Kamer, who is he was at Barton and then started his own business where he sold, where he helped and consulted with a lot of craft distillers early on. You've got Joseph Magliocco, who was the guy that he was responsible for the revitalization of the Michter's brand. And then Chet and Trey Zoller. Chet was an author and got into the whiskey game with his son, and they founded the Jefferson's brand. Chet's no longer in with the whiskey business, but Trey certainly still is. And then we had Greg Fisher, the most recent former mayor of Louisville, and Dean Watts, who was a judge. Okay. So, thoughts on this list?
Yeah, again, hard to argue with a lot of those folks, whether it was industry folks or people involved in the legal side or the consulting side of this industry. I think all of those folks very arguably have a substantial contribution to the industry as a whole. It's interesting to me to see the Zollers on there. Especially when you compare that to the inaugural class or whatever, simply because they are working outside of, so to speak, the production side. They're sourcing that whiskey by and large. Now it is contract distilling to specs and all that kind of thing.
Sure.
But they are doing a very transparent job of that, and they are transforming the whiskey in a substantive way with their aging processes. Yes, we all know there's some crazy marketing around Jefferson's, of course, but at the end of the day, the things that they've done to impact the flavor profile of those whiskeys has been incredible. And so there's some leadership and innovation. I know Greg Fisher wasn't necessarily the most loved by some folks here in Louisville, but made a big push for the revitalization of Whiskey Row and kind of helping with, tax cuts on properties to bring some of these brands and increase downtown tourism, things like that. So I don't really have any gripes with this. But again, this might be, with one or two exceptions, the class where I'm like, okay, what is the criteria for being on this list?
Right.
There's just all over the place. And not that there's anything wrong with any of these individuals.
Sure.
You can just tell by the variety that there's an ambiguous selection process. Can we put it that way? Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah. And the only ones that I have a problem with are the politicians. And if you kind of go through the list through the years, you just start getting politicians kind of scattered in there. And if you look at the list from this year and the list from last year, 20% of the inductees were politicians. I have a problem with that, especially when you have people that have actually worked in and contributed to the bourbon industry in the state of Kentucky, and not. I mean, what are you going to do? Okay, you're Greg Fisher. What's Greg Fisher going to do? Is he going to say, "Nope, we're not going to do this. We don't want to promote bourbon in our in our city"?
Right.
No, he's not going to do that.
Of course not. Right.
Any of these other politicians, what are they going to do? Are they going to go up to Congress and vote for raising tariffs on whiskey? No, they're not going to do that. Okay, so you're giving them accolades for doing the no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you read the bio for Greg Fisher's entrance into the Bourbon Hall of Fame, it has one line about bourbon, and that is he was considered the father of bourbonism.
Bourbonism, yeah, our least favorite word.
You know, again, this is like, you know, born on third base and thought you hit a triple, because it's more a matter of correlation than causation. Okay, bourbon was growing at a rapid rate, and you're just riding that tide, man. And to me, and I'm not just picking on him. You can go down the list of any of the politicians on here. I don't care who they are. They don't need to be in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. They just don't. There's keep that crap out of here, because it does not contribute. So that's my issue with this list.
Sure.
And the year before, who was the politician on it then?
Yarmouth.
John Yarmouth. Again, what's Yarmouth going to do? I mean, I know he's not in Congress now, but what's he going to do? Go up to Washington and rail against the evils of whiskey? Are you going to, try to bring back prohibition? Of course he's not. He's going to vote for every single thing he can to promote bourbon, because he's okay. May not like these guys. You may love these guys, but you can't say, okay, you're a total idiot and you're going to vote against the things that are the biggest in your home state. It's just not going to happen. So you're giving these guys accolades for doing the obvious, and that to me does not warrant induction in the Bourbon Hall of Fame, especially. And you can go back and research it, and I have. These politicians have received campaign contributions from the KDA. Okay, and I didn't go and look. Are they getting contributions from Beam Suntory or any of the other distilleries? I'm sure they are. So they already got theirs, and I just don't see the need to include them here.
Yep, tough to argue with that.
End of rant. Sorry.
No,
it was like this. End of rant 1.
Yeah, that's right. We're not here to make friends on this one.
No, but again, everybody, the others, I have no quarrel with any of that. I think that it's fantastic. Only issue I've got is it just took way too long to get this done for Jerry.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
I know that our old friend Steve Akeley had a real push in the ABV network on this as well. I'd written some stuff several years ago in support of Jerry, and then had the opportunity to interview Jerry for the show when we were making that push for him. And so just it just took too long. And we can talk about some others in a few minutes that may need to get in, and hopefully they will.
Sure.
But before we get into more Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame talk, let's associate one of our really good friends with this controversy. You're welcome, Amzie. Hey, we want to tell you about Bourbon on the Banks. Man, I've been to many festivals over the years, and this one is just fantastic. It is very straightforward. It is very affordable. They have some fantastic vendors there, music, food, you name it. It hits all the points that it needs to hit. So you just need to make plans to be at Bourbon on the Banks on October 7th. Go to bourbononthebanks.org for more information. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram as well, and get more information on all of that. So, Bourbon on the Max, we went last year. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah.
Great time.
Yeah. Again, at some point, you're going to have to think, okay, maybe I'm the asshole. Because it's just, there were people there that just were not easy to talk to. So
No, I think I got out of there at the right time, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, you mentioned that you're having something from one of our inductees here, and I just wanted to share what I was drinking, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
This is the 2020 Parker's Heritage Collection. I had
there you
just
go.
a little bit left in the sample bottle from one of our friends for this. So
Yeah.
it's 10-year, minute and a half char, which is pretty heavy for Heaven Hill, and clocking it at 120 proof. This is Heaven Hill at its best, in my estimation. It's a well-aged, wood-influenced bourbon. It doesn't get into the over oak stuff that some of the, Elijah Craig 18 or the Heaven Hill 27 expressions, just kind of this over oaked profile that you get sometimes from their products. This is a no miss. So just I'm enjoying a little bit of that.
No, I like that. The Parker's Heritage stuff is almost always a hit. I did not care for the one that was finished in a tang barrel.
Or what was it, Curacao, or how do you say that?
Orange Curacao, yeah. I didn't care for that one, but all the rest of them are just home run.
Absolutely.
If you can find it, So, let's talk a little bit about some of the classes in between. We hit the first one, which we agreed. Those are all, they're all very well deserving, and legends, each and every one. Then we talked about this year's class. I had some issues with the politicians. We were excited for Jerry and pretty much okay with everything else.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summary of the first part of the show?
I'd say so.
Okay.
I'd say so. Yeah.
All right. So when you look at everything in between, is there anything that kind of stands out to you as this doesn't look right, or this was unusual, or hey, this was something that was really cool?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of things that are really cool, and maybe we end on those. But just kind of peeking through, around, I guess, 2006 was kind of the first time that it transitioned away from industry exclusive folks, and we started adding journalists. You've got these writers, and so I think that was a pretty unique thing with Mike Beach. Being on there. I think Chuck Cowdery got in a little bit later on.
Jim Murray.
Jim Murray's in there.
Yep.
So those were all cool. I thought that was neat to see. One that I didn't realize how early on he had gotten in was in 2011, Mr. Al Young. That was cool to see. As far as ones that kind of have me scratching my head, and I don't want to level accusations or anything like that, but the 2022 class was also a little puzzling for me. We kind of touched on it with Senator Yarmouth, but Cave Zemanian is kind of the brain trust and the bankroll behind the Rabbit Hole brand. To my knowledge, and I could be incorrect on this, but at the time of his induction, the products that were on the shelves that had the Rabbit Hole label on them had nothing to do with distillation that was going on within that company.
And you're very close. Okay.
To show me where I'm wrong here.
All right.
So we're accurate.
So let me walk us through kind of the timeline there.
Okay.
Rabbit Hole Distillery was founded in 2012.
Okay.
In 2018, they opened their distillery. In 2019, they were sold to Pernod Ricard. And They started, I think their first, again, and this is me going back through TTB data and trying to find a label that says distilled by Rabbit Hole. Okay.
Mhm.
There are lots of produced by, bottled by, but the first distilled by that I saw was in late 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in 2022, he's inducted into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame.
All right.
And, yeah.
So thank you for the clarification. That's actually super helpful because I don't want to take away from an accomplishment. That being said, when you look at some of the other people that are on the list that have had substantive contributions to a brand and have a legacy with which to back that up, that one doesn't really fit.
Right.
Maybe I hang out in snotty, uppity circles, but I don't know a single bourbon fan that says Rabbit Hole's my favorite. I also don't think they have the track record with their own distillate yet to warrant a Hall of Fame induction.
Right.
So that is not to say that he doesn't deserve it or wouldn't at some point in the future. That one just struck me as a little odd.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the one on the list, besides some of the politicians and such that we talked about, that didn't make a ton of sense to me. But it may be more so a time thing than it is anything else. Hey, put out your own whiskey for 10, 15 years, and build some things,
Yeah.
and then that's a different conversation.
And I don't necessarily mind the fact that he had been sourcing the whiskey.
Sure.
But in many cases, they weren't really doing anything additional to that.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, they were doing some things that were, secondary maturations in a sherry cask or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a head scratcher to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is nothing personal at all. And I don't know the man, but and I have a lot of respect for his, came from Iran, built his own business, and good for him.
Absolutely.
And, but the ability to bankroll a brand and then bankroll the construction of a distillery, which is it's a showplace,
Mm-hmm.
and bankroll buying barrels. I don't see how that a 10-year time frame of doing that
Mm-hmm.
warrants induction in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. Because
Right.
at some point, you've got to be able to say that contribution deserves to hang on the same wall with Book or No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now that's a fairly high standard, but you're all in the same club.
Right.
And I guess if that were the only standard, it would be a very small club.
Sure.
But at some point, you have to say, maybe it needs to be a small club.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's like throwing around the title master distiller. You throw it around often enough, it loses its value. It loses its significance. And to my knowledge, Zemanian, he's not distilled anything. I don't know that he's been an active part of blending anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's paid for stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's valuable. Okay. Nobody works for a poor man. Right. So, and the fact that he chose to invest um, in the bourbon industry is, that's fantastic. But he's also been very successful in that he's uh, made a fantastic return on his investment, and
Certainly.
that's good too.
Hmm.
They should be in this business to make money, but that in and of itself is not a qualification for being in the Bourbon Hall of Fame.
Certainly. Certainly.
So,
What were some other ones that you were maybe going to take umbrage with?
um, looking back through it, most of it is just like I said before, the politicians. I think some that were real positives. Freddie Johnson was cool.
Freddie Johnson's a great get. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. If you want to talk about somebody that's an absolute champion for a brand, um, other than maybe Baker Beam, Freddie is, probably part and parcel with just brand ambassadorship.
yeah.
Kind of he is the standard for a tour guide and a brand ambassador in the state.
But here, and it's not just his brand,
Hmm.
because when you hear Freddie talk, yeah, he's promoting his brand, but
Hmm.
he's also promoting the industry. He's promoting the other guy's brand, and he sees it. Rising tide lifts all boats, and
Hmm.
he's he is the brand ambassador's brand ambassador.
Absolutely.
And Buffalo Trace is fortunate to have him.
Hmm.
But so I think he's done a fantastic job with them and for the industry itself. And I guess that's another part of it is it's what you've done just for your own brand, or has it contributed to the growth and prominence of bourbon as a whole?
Hmm.
And not to pick on Rabbit Hole, but I don't know that there's anything that has been done through that brand that has elevated bourbon as a whole.
Sure. Well, have you been to Louisville Airport recently? Because you think it's the only brand in town. If you've been in Terminal A at all in the last 2
Well,
years.
look, marketing is a interesting thing.
Absolutely.
But no, I think that there are some. I don't necessarily have issues with any of the other names. Granted, there are some that I don't know, and
Certainly.
didn't take the time to fully research everybody.
Hmm.
But I think it's a good list.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty hard to argue most of these.
But there's some names that aren't on the list.
Yes.
And I think there's some significance there. Now, I'll go ahead and say the first one that's on my list that's not on this list.
Okay.
And that's Jason Bronner.
Jason Bronner, he was on my list too. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think you can say, if you can't just look at it and say what he's done with Buzzard's Roost warrants being on the Bourbon Hall of Fame, because it doesn't. Although I love that brand, I think that they're doing some great things with it. They've experienced a significant amount of growth. But again, it's gone on for 4 years, 4 very successful years. But I would personally think, okay, you need a longer track record than that.
Mm-hmm.
But you combine that with what he's done with Bourbon's Bistro, and that is that to me warrants induction, because that set the standard for the bourbon bar, bourbon restaurant experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear him talk about how when he went out, he was out in wine country 20 years ago or whatever, and he saw how they really promoted the wine industry there.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at bourbon and he said, why aren't we doing anything like that? And that was one of the things that prompted him to start Bourbon's Bistro. So I think that in and of itself warrants his induction. I think that he is a great ambassador, not just for his restaurant, but for bourbon in general. And he's been doing that for 17, 18 years now. And then you layer on top of that Buzzard's Roost. I don't, it doesn't make sense that he would not be in the 2024 class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah. He was the one of a few, but he was the top name on my list that I think deserves to be next.
Who else? Who else do you have on your list?
I've got two names that are immediately come to mind that I think could potentially be in the next few years. You tell me if I'm wrong here. One of those names is Stephen Fonte of Limestone Branch. I think, Fonte has been an absolute champion, not only of that brand, but of the industry as a whole. He is an educator. He is a passionate, advocate for bourbon and everything that it brings. He's introduced many of us to excellent cigar and whiskey pairings, and he is just a tireless road dog. He is everywhere and anywhere they'll have him preaching the good news of bourbon. He's been around the industry for quite some time now, but if I'm not mistaken, there's a fairly substantial anniversary coming up for him, and I would just love to see him get a little praise. It may be another few years on him, but I think he's going to go down as one of the great advocates, not only for Limestone Branch, but for the industry as a whole.
I agree. And I think he kind of falls in the same category as Freddie Johnson.
I agree. Yeah.
But I don't know that you could put Fonte in without putting Steve Beam in.
Absolutely. Steve Beam is another one. Yep.
Yeah. And I think it would be cool if they went in this together. I think that would be fantastic. And but you look at what Steve has done in resurrecting the Yellowstone brand, in reaching back into his own family history with the yeast strain that they use and the mash bill that they use on that family series, especially the experimental rye stuff, which we've talked about many times. So I think that would make a lot of sense. And if you've ever been on, had the great fortune of being on a tour at Limestone Branch with Fonte, you would say, okay, put this guy in now. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good.
Anybody else on your list?
There's some that I think are probably likely, but one just that I would love to see at some point would be Chris Zaborowski of Westport Whiskey and Wine. Chris has been in the wine and spirits industry better part of 30 years.
Yeah.
And has, probably over the last 15 or so, really created the best bourbon shop, retail shop in Kentucky, period. And maybe anywhere.
Right.
That is just a destination. If you're in Louisville, over the last 15 years, you've got to go and see what Chris and the team there have done. I know they recently sold a business, much to our chagrin, but they created just an incredible atmosphere of education, making sure their staff were well educated. Created a great tasting bar. It was kind of a neat place to be able to try a lot of really amazing and kind of special whiskeys. But the biggest thing I think Chris does that goes kind of under the radar, despite all his success and his reputation as a barrel picker, is being a mentor to people that are coming up in the industry. And so, he's championed the Bourbon Steward and Executive Bourbon Steward programs, kind of on the level, or to at least be on the level of pride that one would get with a sommelier certification, and just really trying to increase that level of education, writing those curriculums, and all that kind of stuff. And so he may not be a well-known name outside of, Louisville necessarily, but what he's done for bourbon and launching other people is pretty stinking special. So,
yeah. I've talked about, when we talk about music a lot of times, like, this is a band's band. Okay. You may not know that band, but the band that you do know, they know that band.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're outside of the Louisville market, you might not know who Chris is, but whatever whiskey you're drinking, if it's from Kentucky, the person that made it, they know who Chris is.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And they respect Chris, and they know what his tasting profile is. He's learned them as they have learned him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I had the great pleasure of doing a pick with Chris out at Wild Turkey once. And Eddie said, yeah, I've pulled these because I know that they're ones that you would like.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been doing this together long enough that Eddie knows what Chris is after, and respects what Chris is after, and respects Chris enough that, okay, I'm not going to waste your time
Mm-hmm.
putting a single barrel in front of you that I know is not going to be in a profile that you're gonna want for your store.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody else on your list?
Yeah, a few. Ken Lewis.
Yeah.
Party Source started New Riff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's definitely a case to be made there. Pat Heist.
Yeah. That one's got to be coming. That one's only a matter of time.
Yeah. The working with Farm Solutions, and obviously the start of Wilderness Trail, the growth of that brand. Yeah, there's something to be said there. One that surprises me that isn't on the list,
mm-hmm.
and this goes way, way back, Colonel E.H. Taylor.
Yeah.
Why not?
Sure. Well, there might be some members of the KDA that have been embattled in a lawsuit over who gets to use his name.
Well,
so
maybe
I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but that may have held up the works.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Dr. Crow.
Yeah.
Not Ann.
Yep.
There are, when you talked about journalists,
mm-hmm.
What about Fred?
Fred Minnick, that was another one that I was surprised was not on that list. If you want to talk about volume of words written on the subject and research
mm-hmm.
done, as well as his advocacy and charity organizations, tasting, yep. taking it outside of the Kentucky market, he's definitely made a substantial contribution to the industry. So.
Yes. If you don't know that he did, just ask him. No, the thing that you cannot deny is the influence that Fred has with the bourbon public. Now, how much influence does he have with the KDA membership? That I don't know.
Sure.
And then you're kind of getting into, okay, well, he said something bad about one of my brands once, and so screw that guy. Right. And if that's the case, that would be wrong.
Absolutely.
And if Fred's pulling punches because he doesn't want to upset anybody, that too would be wrong. But I think that just the influence alone, I think that it probably warrants it. If you've got Jim Murray in there, you've got Mike Beach in there, I don't mm-hmm. see how Fred would not be one day.
Yep. I still will never forgive him for taking Henry McKenna from me. So, we can give him the tip of the hat and the props and all that for sure. But
yeah,
I'm still mad.
Now let me ask you about one other.
Sure.
And it's just one of those things. I just kind of see it coming because of the way this person's been marketed, and that's Marianne Eves.
Yeah. It would be unfair of me to say that the story is completely told. There may be a contribution coming at some point that would warrant a nomination.
Mm-hmm.
She's obviously talented. you do not get to the second in command at Woodford Reserve, uh, you know, without
Right.
some level of giftedness. Most definitely. That being said, especially since leaving Woodford, it's hard to see a contribution that is any different than any of the other distillery operators or brand ambassadors that are in the
Mhm.
day-to-day thing and nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah.
So, if there is a claim there that I'm missing, sure,
Mhm.
more than happy to hear that out. But for the same reasons that we sort of take umbrage with some of these other people for the overall contribution within a certain amount of time, I would maybe say it's definitely not time yet in my mind.
Right. Um, Part of it is the um, Kentucky's first female master distiller
Hmm.
moniker that I think by law you have to say anytime you say her name. And I'm not trying to diminish that accomplishment at all, but uh, there are some that would argue that that was not Marianne, but it was uh, Pam Heilman at Michter's. And when questioned about that, not by me, okay, I did not stir that pot. When questioned about that on social media, Marianne gets very, very defensive. And that's a bad look. But maybe there's, like you said, there's more to be accomplished down the line. Some would say if she's Kentucky's first female master distiller, then that in and of itself warrants induction. Maybe so. Last I checked, I don't get a vote,
Hmm.
nor do I expect one now. But I don't know. I think that that I don't know. That may be brewing, but you
Sure.
don't know. I think there is certainly politics that plays into this,
Hmm.
um, literally and figuratively. Uh, by and large, I like the whole concept of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. I thought they postponed it in not just 2020, but also in 2021.
Hmm.
I get the 2020 COVID hit. Nobody knew what the heck was going on. But by 2021, I think we were in a spot where that could have happened, but it
Hmm.
didn't. So I don't know. I think that it for the most part, it does a really good job acknowledging the contributions of people to the bourbon industry. But it's not without some warts.
Sure.
Now, at some future date, we will do a show like this about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's going to get scorched.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just is, man. It just is. It's not like we're inducting vodka makers into the Bourbon Hall of Fame or anything, but it's kind of what they're doing with rock and roll. But
Yeah, don't get me started there.
yeah. All right. Any other thoughts?
No, I'll be really interested to see what the next couple years of this voting brings.
Yeah.
I think, to your point with the 2021 group not having an induction during that year, one of the things I noticed, there does not seem to be a consistent size of class
Right.
uh, in the last, decade or so. So maybe we'll see some folks that would have gotten passed over during those breaks get in, and I'll just be
Yeah.
interested to see if, as new members are added to the KDA and such, what the
Yeah.
voting looks like, and it'll be a fun thing to watch.
Yeah. And if unless you're a politician, I bear no ill will towards anybody that's in the hall. And I know we talked about rabbit hole, and that's a weird situation, but that's not something that I'm mad about or the whole thing that's somebody's a bad dude because of it. I just didn't. Hashtag too soon. But I think that I wouldn't have a problem if they made a separate wing of it if they wanted to for contributions through politics and the law. I don't know, and get those guys, and they're a separate corner. Put them on a short bus or whatever. I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't need to see. This has nothing to do with whether you're a D or an R. But I don't need to see John Yarmouth's plaque hanging on the same wall with Parker Beam or Jimmy Russell. Just don't. It does not belong. Show me what you've done. Nothing. You've done nothing. But anyway. All right. Anything else, Drew?
That's all I got on this one.
All right, man. So tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
Yeah. I am on Instagram at drew.crawley63. As I always say, that's the most up-to-date place for life and music. And then the website is drewcrawleymusic.com. That'll be all the show dates that we have confirmed. Looking to add some more for late fall into winter very soon. And then just keep your eyes out for the record. It's coming.
It's
spent
coming.
a good amount of time this week in Nashville getting it done. So excited to be able to share that with you guys, hopefully very soon.
Well, we were looking forward to it and to the live shows that support it. And, so keep your eyes peeled, folks. As for our show, you can watch us on YouTube. And if you're there, hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate that. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. Are we way out of line on any of this? If you're a big Rabbit Hole fan, maybe you've got a different opinion, which I did. I was up at the Whiskey Festival in Wisconsin back in May, I guess it was. Mm-hmm. And Rabbit Hole guy, he was just all about how great Rabbit Hole was. And so I had practice for tonight during that conversation. Anyway, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you are the former mayor of Louisville and you think you should really be in Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, I don't know what I'm talking about. Leave a comment. Let me know. I wonder how many former mayors actually listen. Probably not many. If you want to listen to the show, you can on your favorite podcast platform, as long as it's Apple, Spotify, or Google. We have a Facebook page where we post all of our shows, including this one. We have a Facebook group where you can talk about what you're listening to and what you may be drinking while you're listening to it. So check us out there. Join in all the fun. All right, Drew, the next show we're going to have will be, we find it. There we go.
Yes, our friends Ouida. So this is a band that I got the pleasure of playing with at the Monarch not too long ago. Great group of guys out of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yep.
So we're going to be enjoying some Chattanooga whiskey and chatting with those guys about everything that they've got going on. So that'll be a great show.
Yeah, that will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that one. So on behalf of Drew and myself, until next time, cheers, love, and free bird.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Night.